Excellent. Well, thank you, Pachi, for having me for the third edition of this fantastic conference. I'm very proud of what you did in the last 5 years. We started 5 years ago with the first cohort in Portuguese, and today we are 50 cohorts and more than 500 people who've gone through the program. And you've created a fantastic community, and I think you should all be very proud of that. So, congratulations. So, today, I would like to talk a little bit with you about speak-up culture. Speak-up culture. Who has ever heard about speak-up culture? Right? Maybe some of your organizations are actually thinking about or trying to implement a speak-up culture. And I have some clients contacting me to see how I can help them to build a speak-up culture. The problem is, I don't believe in speak-up culture. I don't believe in speak-up culture because it's only half of the picture. And the missing part is much more important. Speaking up is actually very easy. If you can talk, you can speak up. When we talk about speak-up culture, we say to all of you, you have to take the action of speaking up. It's your responsibility to speak up. But a speak-up culture is not just about that. In fact, a speak-up culture depends on how we react when people speak up. That is the missing part. And in my experience, it's much more important than the speaking up part. It's how we react that creates, or not, the speaking up culture. When somebody speaks up or takes another kind of interpersonal risk, this is the definition of Professor Edmondson. You've maybe seen it before. A shared belief by the members of the team that the team is safe for taking those interpersonal risks. So it's the reaction that all of us have when somebody takes an interpersonal risk that will determine how we continue or not to speak up or to take interpersonal risks. Let's, as an example, talk about financial investment. Let's assume I invest in the stock market, okay? I think everybody would agree that's taking a risk. But if you think about it, the actual action of doing the investment is not difficult at all. It takes 1 minute. And it's not risky. The risk only comes after the investment. The risk depends on how the stock market will react. If the stock market goes up, I will be very happy with my investment. I think my risk paid off. If the stock market goes down, I will not be so happy. I will lose my money, and I think my investments didn't work very well. So it's the reaction of the stock market that determines whether I continue my action of investing. If that reaction of the stock market is positive, I will continue. If the reaction of the stock market is negative, I will probably stop taking that risk because I realize it doesn't pay off. And it's the same with interpersonal risks. Interpersonal risks is an action I take that then is followed by the reaction of other people. For example, saying I don't agree or sharing a particular idea. But that actual action is not risky. Sharing the idea is not risky. The risk, again, just like the investment, lies in how people react. It's the way people react, one more time, that determines whether you build up psychological safety or break it down. And that is even more the case in the situation of a leader. The way the leader reacts has a much bigger impact than anybody else in the team. If the leader reacts positively, he or she will continue to build psychological safety. If they react wrongly or negatively, that's the best way to destroy psychological safety. So let's think a little bit how a leader can react when somebody takes an interpersonal risk. Let's take the example of somebody sharing an idea or making a proposal to deal with a certain issue. How can the leader react? Well, maybe the leader can say, we've tried that before. Or the boss, the big boss, will not like that. Or your idea is too expensive, too difficult, too easy, too big, or too small. Or my favorite, yes, but. Have you ever heard these kind of reactions? Please raise your hand. You did already. Please raise your hand if you had your boss have this kind of reactions. And also raise your hand if maybe you have in the past had this kind of reactions. A few brave ones. So what happens when the leader reacts like this to somebody taking an interpersonal risk? It's the end of the conversation. The person who gets this kind of reaction will very quickly decide that it's better not to speak up, that it's better not to take interpersonal risks anymore with that leader. And the people around it who observe what is going on will come to the same conclusion. They will also think that it's better not to speak up, not to take interpersonal risks. So what can a leader do that's better to develop psychological safety? Well, those of you who know the program that Pachi has been delivering, or who know my books, we have a lot of tools and techniques to help a team, the team leader, develop this sense of psychological safety. But today I'm going to talk about something that's not in my book, and that's maybe the secret weapon for the leader to use and create psychological safety. And that is the questions that you ask. The questions that you use are a key and easy tool to build psychological safety. Let me explain. We used to say that knowledge is power. I'm sure you've heard that before, right? But in today's complex world, and we heard a lot about all the complexities going on, the knowledge that you have, which is by definition from the past, is not giving you the answers for all the complex, ambiguous, volatile issues of today. The key to thrive in a VUCA world is not the knowledge of the past. The key is to learn. It's only by learning that we can survive in this complex world. The knowledge from the past is no longer serving us. And when you think about it, children have the biggest need for learning. When children are born, they know nothing. Some of you maybe say they still don't know anything now, but let's assume that when they are born, they know nothing. They have to learn everything about this complex world that they just arrived in. Who here has children or nieces or nephews who are 4, 5, 6 years old? Okay. Do they ask questions? Yes, they ask questions. Lots of questions. And very good questions. Like, why is the sky blue? Good luck, mom and dad, to answer that one. Or, why does this man have no hair? Children ask these questions to learn. And they don't ask questions to their friends. They ask questions to the adults. They know that it's the adults that can help them get new knowledge, get new awareness of what's going on in the world. So it's very cute, right? When the small little kids, they ask all these questions. It's very cute for a while. What happens at some point? Okay, stop it now. Stop asking all these questions. You're embarrassing mom or dad. And then we decide that we send children to school to learn even more. Now, what do we teach them in school? Do we teach them how to ask better questions to learn even more? No. We do the opposite. We teach them the answers, and we tell them to remember the correct answers. And when the time comes to check what they have learned, what do? We ask the questions to check if they know the answer, if they know the correct answer. Now, I don't know if you remember when you had to study for your exam, for some of you a long time ago. How did you feel when you were studying for your exam? Did you feel motivated and engaged and creative? Not really. You felt stressed. You were afraid that you would encounter questions where you don't know the answer. After the education system, we then join the workforce. We join a company. And in the interview, the company will ask the questions to check if the candidate has the correct answers. Asking questions to check if somebody knows the correct answer is not how we engage or motivate people. Questions like that are stressing and creating disengagement with the people we have around us. So on the one hand, when we are very young, we're very good at asking questions to learn. But as we grow up, questions start to get a negative awareness, a negative image. It becomes questions we're afraid that we will not be able to give the correct answer. And so I think it's time to change that again, to think a little bit about what questions are really about and to put questions again in their rightful place to help people learn. Questions are very powerful. I'll give you a few examples. Questions are often the start of problem solving or innovations. The story about the Polaroid goes as follows. There was a young girl, a little girl, who went to the beach with her engineer father, and she said, "Daddy, Daddy, did you take my picture?" "Yes, yes, honey, I took your picture. Can you show it to me, please?" "Well, you're gonna have to wait a few weeks." That innocent question by that little child led to the invention of the Polaroid camera, where we get the result of the picture right away. Our brain loves to solve problems. Sometimes our brain looks for solutions when we're not thinking about it actively, right? Maybe you've had that experience that you wake up in the morning or you take a shower and all of a sudden you get an idea that you didn't have before. That's called the aha moment, right? And often that trigger is a question, just like in the Polaroid story. So one technique when you're stuck with a problem is to write down a question before you go to bed, to write down on a piece of paper a question and let your brain do the work at night. And hopefully in the morning, you get some ideas of how to solve your problem. Questions are also very good at creating connections. In experiments with blind dates, researchers have found that the people who ask more questions than talk have a better chance for a follow-up date with the same person. So that's something you can apply right away. And powerful questions can actually change our life. I come from Thailand. I live in Thailand, in Bangkok, the capital. And there's a city in the north of Thailand called Chiang Mai. It's about 1 hour by plane. And my wife and I love the north, nature, culture, food, etc. So we went to Chiang Mai. The city is called Chiang Mai 3 or 4 times per year on holiday. But I always considered Bangkok to be the place to live for work and other things. But I know that my wife liked to live in Chiang Mai. She was dreaming about living in Chiang Mai. And so one day she asked me, what stops us from moving to Chiang Mai? And it was actually a powerful question. I could not come up with a good reason to say something stops us. Now, if she would have listed all the good reasons to move to Chiang Mai, I think I would have countered every reason on her list. But by asking the question, what stops us? That was a question that I really didn't have a good answer for. And so we ended up moving to Chiang Mai. That is an example of a powerful question. I'm not sure if some of you have had a powerful question in your life, a question that made you think and that actually changed your life. Well, maybe some of you have. Will you marry me is a powerful question. And for many, it changes our life very profoundly. Note that we ask, will you marry me? We do not say, I think you should marry me because reason number 1, reason number 2, reason number 3. Okay, so it's the question that makes the difference. So questions are really, in my experience, a very powerful yet very unused way to engage people and to solve problems. Have you ever come home after work and shared with your partner, spouse, husband, a problem you were facing, a challenge you were facing at work, and after they listen to you, they tell you what to do? How does that feel? Now, they mean well, right? They want to help you. But how does it feel when somebody tells you what you should do? It doesn't really work that well, right? Our brain does not react very well when people tell us what to do. And I would like to propose, to illustrate the power of questions, an activity that we're going to do right now. So we need some light in the room, please. The activity is called Question Burst. I don't know how you translate burst, but burst is like something like that, okay? So we're going to do Question Burst in pairs. So pairs, we're going to form, in Portuguese, of course, don't worry. And we've done a few activities since this morning, so I suggest, if possible, you find somebody new, somebody with whom you have not yet talked, if possible, okay? I'll explain the steps first. So step one will be, person number one will share a challenge for 1 minute. In step number two, person number two will ask questions for 4 minutes. And step number three, we will compare feelings before and after, just quickly. So we'll do it step by step. Okay, does everybody have a pair, a partner? I'll give you 5 seconds to find a partner. We didn't start yet. We'll start all together. Okay, so everybody has a partner? Okay. Marcia has no partner. You want to come here? Okay. Okay, so step number one. So I explain in English, but of course you do it in Portuguese. So step number one, person number one will explain the problem, the situation, or the challenge. Person number two, you see on the image, does not say anything. No questions, no comments. Okay, that's the first step. And we'll do that for 1 minute. You'll see a timer on the screen. I repeat, so you decide who is 1 and 2. Person number one will talk about a challenge, a problem. It can be professional, it can be personal, it can be a mix. For 1 minute, person number two only listens. Let's go. Okay, that was the 1 minute. Okay, let me explain step number two. We're still in step number one. Now the person, and I forgot to tell you, you will need something to write. You will need, what is it, papelo, right? Papelo? You will need paper or something to write. Now person number one, you identify 2 words that explain how you feel about your problem or challenge or situation. 2 words, and you write them down and you share them with your partner. Okay, please do that now. 2 words, write down and share with your partner. Okay, are we good to go? 2 words, okay. Now we go to step number 2. Step number 2, very important. Person number one will only listen. Person number two will only ask questions. As many questions as you want in 4 minutes. But the rules are, nobody answers the questions. You just ask them. You don't answer them. You also don't explain why you ask your question. Okay, you don't need to introduce your question. Just ask your question. And person number one will write down all the questions, literally. Okay? So for 4 minutes, don't be afraid of silence, because there will be some silence. 4 minutes is quite long. So stay with the rules. Person number one, only write down the questions. Person number two, only ask questions to try to help person number one. We're good? 4 minutes. Okay, that was 4 minutes. And I could notice that in the beginning there was a lot of noise, and towards the end there was far less noise. That's normal. It's normal that there is a bit of silence as well. So now we go to step number 3. Person number 1, you will now go back and read all the questions that you should have written down. I'm not sure if you remember that instruction. So read back in your mind, in silence, all the questions you wrote down, and then identify again 2 words that describe how you now feel about your situation. And this you get just 30 seconds. So read in silence and find 2 words to explain how you feel about your situation. 30 seconds. Okay, so how was that? I would like to ask to all the people who are number 1, who share the problem, whether right now, and you have to be honest, you feel better about your situation, or the same, or maybe even worse. Can the people who are number 1 show me better, same, or worse? I want to say again, do you feel better than before? Do you feel the same? Or do you feel worse? Once I had somebody who felt worse, so it can happen. Oh, Okay, most of the time, most people feel better, although they did not receive any advice of what to do. They were not told what to do, but just receiving these questions, and I hope your questions were honest, good questions, your brain starts to think differently about maybe options, possibilities that you had not thought before. So that's just an illustration of the power of asking questions. So how can we get better at asking questions? Now, many people have written books about asking questions, about what are good questions. And of course, today we don't have time to read books. But I propose to do a quick crash course to give you the basics of how to ask better questions. And of course, the first basic distinction is between closed questions and open-ended questions. I think everybody knows that. Closed questions limit the answers to yes or no, or A or B. So one example, inspired by a discussion this week, is which beef is better, Brazilian or Argentinian? No, that's a closed question. That's an example of a closed question, okay? There's only 2 possible answers. And then open-ended questions start with how, why, when, what, who, where, when, I think. And they allow people to give their honest opinion about, or honest feelings about a certain situation. Now, that's the basic. Now, be careful, because very often we say open-ended questions are much more powerful, but open-ended question can also be very dangerous, right? So an open-ended question like, how do I look in this dress? Also, although it's officially asking for your honest opinion and feelings, be careful about how you answer that. The second distinction is leading questions. Leading questions are questions where you actually try to suggest an answer. They're not real questions, right? Don't you think it would be a great idea if we do this or that? If it's the leader asking questions like that, it's almost guaranteed that you will not get any input or any reaction from the members of your team. So those are the basics. If you want to create engagement, create psychological safety, try to ask open-ended questions and don't ask leading questions. But in my experience, that is not enough. I think we need to be a little bit more deliberate about asking questions. And I would like to propose to you a little framework that I very creatively called the art of asking questions. And the A stands for ask what you don't know and abandon control. So ask what you don't know. If you ask a question, and think about it because we do this often, if you ask a question where you know the answer, then why do you ask? You only ask to check if the other person knows the same answer like you. That's not a real question. That's like the exam question. Questions like that create stress and disengagement. So ask questions where you honestly do not know the answer. And the second A is abandon control. Now, when you talk, you're in control. But when you ask a question, you give control to the other person. When they give you the answer, you let them take control. But that requires you to abandon control. It's only if you abandon control, if you let them go with the answer, that you create engagement and trust and learning. The Dalai Lama used to say, when you speak, when you talk, you only repeat what you know. If you listen, you will maybe learn something new. Okay? So that's the A for ask what you don't know and abandon control. Then the R is for real questions and reflect first. A real question, what I call a real question, is maximum 20 words long. If you go longer than 20 words, if you start to have long-winded questions, they're not real questions. They are questions where you explain your own question, or sometimes question where you answer your own question. So keep it short, ask real short questions, and then wait for the answer. And to do that, you need to reflect, because our brain is very quick and very reactive. You give your brain a little space, 2 seconds, just to think before you ask your question, to move from the reactive mode to the reflective mode. And try to craft a question that is more meaningful, more engaging. And the last, the T, stands for treat your question as a gift. Most of the time when you ask a question, we want something in return. We ask it to get an answer back. Try to see your question as a gift, just like we did in the question burst. A gift is something you give to somebody and you don't expect anything in return. Don't make your question as a demand or request to get something back. Just give it as a gift and leave it up to the receiver to do with your question what they want. And I think this little framework of thinking more about your question will help you ask better questions and create more engagement. So in summary, rather than think about speak-up culture, I invite you to take the own responsibility and change your own questions. And think about the art, A-R-T, of asking questions. Because if you can ask questions like this, honest questions where you don't know the answer, abandon control, let the other person take over, real questions, reflecting first and asking real questions, and treat your question as a gift, that, in my experience, is the key to not just get answers, but create engagement, create trust, and create the psychological safety that your team needs. So that's what I wanted to share with you. I hope it will be useful. So, obrigado and boa sorte.